Hello and welcome to the Winning Agenda's coverage of the International Twilight Struggle League. My name's Jesse Marshall, here with a game against Ken. No worries, we were supposed to play last night. It would have been a Christmas special for our US viewers, but unfortunately had to reschedule to today, so no problems there. All worked out well in the end. This hand, what are we looking at? I think a pretty standard setup. If our opponent tries to do to set up into France, then we've got Suez Crisis. We may just headline Europe scoring because our hand is a little bit light on for ops. We have CIA created, which we want to get rid of before we play Fidel. Otherwise, not too much by way of sequencing. I guess of note with this hand, no D cards, no Vietnam Revolts, no 4 ops. So not an ideal start for the USSR in terms of tempo. But hopefully we can get Europe scored and then probably successfully coup Iran, I think is probably the game plan here for this turn. And use that as our gateway, hopefully, into Asia. So we're not going to headline the Suez Crisis because we're not under threat of getting dominated in Europe in the headline phase here. So defectors to our Europe scoring is totally fine. And then we will use Comic-Con here for the coup and see how we go. Fingers crossed. It's a good start. I guess, as always, as the Soviets straight up, if you do get influence in there and they coup you back with a 4-op, it can be less than ideal, but at least we've forced our opponent to have a 4-op and spend a coup in here. Which then gives us the opportunity to obviously play into Afghanistan, play into South Korea, do some more creative things, as well as getting rid of this CIA created at some point before we potentially play Fidel, although eventing Fidel on turn 1, not ideal. Once you have got rid of CIA created, it's a little better, but we'll probably put it back in the deck, I dare say. So our opponent opting not to coup, interesting, kind of indicates that perhaps they don't have a 4-op card, or at least that they're not willing to take the tempo hit of rolling a 1. So do we... I think we definitely want to spread. But I guess the question is, do we want to perhaps coup Lebanon to get our opponent out of there whilst we have the opportunity to do so, and leave DEFCON high? I'm kind of somewhat minded to do that, particularly since we have CIA. Although getting rid of CIA, obviously, when DEFCON's at 3 is particularly good. Good luck from France. Thank you very much, Matt. France has been reasonably kind to us so far in this game, so that's all right. Yeah, so whether to play the CIA here or whether to go into Afghanistan, Pakistan, and or South Korea, I guess is the real question. I think I'd want to get rid of this and coup Lebanon, even though we could get DEFCON down and then use it. Because I think we want to leave DEFCON high this turn, and I want to get rid of this to increase my efficiency later in the turn and my flexibility more than anything. NORAD probably go into space, notable as well. So we'll try and get that off sooner in the turn rather than later. But right now it's kind of a dance around Thailand and whether they go in there at DEFCON 4 or whether they try and reduce DEFCON and how they reduce DEFCON, whether it's cooing Iran and then potentially us having a counter coup or so on and so forth. So it's always this kind of first turn dance around, but I don't mind getting rid of CIA and cooing Lebanon here, depending on what they do. I mean, they may use this to coup Iran or coup Iraq. I mean, more likely Iran, because they've just got better odds of succeeding. Or North Korea. Or they may just go into Thailand. They may go into Egypt, I guess, and then try and go into Libya on their action round. So they're opting for coup Iran. That's fine. We'll then, I think, opt for coup Panama, just to get DEFCON right down. I know that we said coup Lebanon, but I think leaving DEFCON at 3 going to their action round is bad, and would rather just coup Panama and give ourselves a DEFCON 2 here. Obviously gives them the chance to go into Thailand, but it gives us the best chance of retaining access to Pakistan and Afghanistan, and rather denying them access to both the Eastern Middle East and Northwestern Asia, which is obviously a crucial objective in turn 1 for us. Unfortunate that if they have Middle East scoring, they get to cash it in for 3 VPs here. I mean, that's just the unfortunate byproduct of the way the rolls went there. And they've opted to go Egypt and Thailand. Totally fair enough. So we'll put 1 into... We're obviously going to play into Iran. I think I want to put 1 into Pakistan and 1 into South Korea. Although it's obviously a better threat if we can actually take South Korea. I want to put 1 into Pakistan because I want to start moving through there. And I also want to see that if they play the war, they don't actually get control of the country. But I want to put 1 in South Korea so that we can take the country with one of our 3-up cards. There's a bit of a conundrum here. I think we can afford to wait an action round on Asia because we're not going to race our way across there anyway. I think we're going to have to rely on Vietnam revolts or decolonization to give us the chance to flip Thailand back. So I'd rather keep the South Korea threat alive here, as well as giving ourselves the opportunity with Iran to stop them from having domination in the Middle East. And obviously if they go aggressively for Middle East plays here, we can take Iraq. So they've invented Korean War. Unfortunate failure there, because if that had succeeded, then they couldn't stop us from taking it, even if they put the 2 ops in there, because they would have equaled it up at 2-all. So with that in mind, I think we want to probably put some ops in there. Like I might put 3 in there and just race them for South Korea, because that's actually looking quite important to Asia domination here. We've obviously got the China card as somewhat of a trump card, but we've also got blockade to punish them for ops wars. So we'll see if they honour that threat and how many high ops cards they have. Because I've only played 1 4-op, so you'd imagine they've probably got another 3-op at least. The odds would probably be in favour of that being the case. The play into Egypt did kind of indicate to me that maybe they had Nasser. And they were wanting to get to Lebanon quickly, to Libya quickly, but it may have just been that they wanted to keep the pressure on us in terms of Middle East scoring and force us to put that up into Iran as well on that action round. So by keeping sort of a reasonable amount of pressure on them, we've stopped them from going to space. So if they go to space here and hit, that's unfortunate. If they go to space and miss, then we get to take South Korea, which is great. If they don't go to space, we'll see what they do as to whether we need to respond to it. So they're playing the war, playing 1 is South Korea, okay, and starting the march across there. So I think we'll probably put 1 in South Korea, 1 into Pakistan, and then try and block them off. Now that they've played the war, I do want to stop them from getting the rest of these battlegrounds, and this might be one of those situations where I'm actually willing to play the China card on turn 1, particularly since we had a pretty low up start. And if they go into Burma now, then I may be willing to... Okay. So they didn't go into Burma, so I'm not going to spend the China card. With our AR6, they played UN intervention. And they've got 3 cards left in hand, 2 cards left in hand. My webcam's in front of my card tracker. So with 2 cards left in hand, do we want to blockade them? Or do we want to go to space here? I think I still want to go to space. I mean, this means that they could play into Burma, and it means that we'll probably lose South Korea. But we'll see how we go. So we got there on space. It was just a bit awkward having no red hanging around in hand there. Red scare's unfortunately out of the way, so blockade gets a lot worse, but yeah, they had a red card. I mean, chances of them having a red card there were pretty high, given they only played Korean War so far. This hand is terrible for us, which means that their hand is probably pretty terrible for them as well. And we probably want to get one of the blue cards out of the way. We're probably going to actually... we unfortunately don't have a way to get mill-ups, and Korean War, AI War, and Indo-Pakistani War are all out of the way. Korean War and AI War more importantly, because that means that we're not going to get mill-ups this turn, most likely, if we play duck and cover. But I do think we want to play duck and cover, which means probably headlining something else. So headlining Truman Doctrine is a bit meh. I'd probably rather play that on our final action round. We could headline Independent Reds, or we could headline Blockade here. I think I'd probably rather just headline Blockade and cut their hand size and get rid of a high ups card, and then duck and cover AR1, and then we can take India with our superior ops AR2. I think that's probably the way to go. And then Independent Reds in our hand is just a better card than Blockade, because it's worth more ups. I mean, there's obviously this gets Blockade out of the deck, but I think guaranteeing that if they have D-Star, we get it back, plus forcing them to get rid of a good card in hand is a better outcome for us. So let's duck and cover. We give up some VPs, but we get a crucial country in South Korea, and we also retain the impetus in Asia, in the sense that if we had couped AR1, then they could have either taken South Korea, or they could have played into Burma and threatened South Korea or India. I mean, probably better to just take South Korea, but yeah, either way, it opened us up to some less than optimal outcomes. Whereas I think this is better. So unfortunate that they've played Romanian Abdication, because now obviously Independent Reds gets a lot worse, especially since we've got Truman Doctrine in hand. So we may actually space Independent Reds here, given that the rest of our hand is, pretty decent, and probably not going to be spaced. So let's just use US Japan to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we take Pakistan. We are obviously still behind on the non-battleground country count, doing that. But I think that's the best thing. If they have Asia scoring, it gives us the best VP buffer, and we want to have Pakistan if we take India for the purposes of the war. Probably ideally would like to take Burma as well, but without decolonization and without de-Stalinization and Vietnam revolts at this point, we're a little bit pressed for countries in Southeast Asia, so we just have to, I think, set up our position as best we can with what we have access to. We'd probably like to overprotect North Korea and South Korea this turn. And we may take Afghanistan. May even take, let's see, country count-wise. 5, 6, 7. So if we take Taiwan and we end up getting Vietnam from Vietnam revolts, and we get Afghanistan at some point, that only takes us to 7. So we're relying on decol or spending 3 ops in both Burma and Taiwan this turn to get ahead, to get to 8 countries for the country count. 3 ops spent in Burma this turn is not irrelevant. Like, that's actually pretty decent. But we obviously have plenty of other options for spending 3 ops, such as 1 in Syria, 2 in Iraq, which would give us domination and force a bit of a response from them. So no more scoring cards in hand by the looks, and they've chosen to take Burma, which is fair enough. So I think I'm actually minded to put the pressure on the Middle East a little bit more than doing what I was describing and taking Taiwan and taking Afghanistan. It would be nice to get to France and get into Algeria first. But I think with this hand, we've just got to focus on doing what we can do most efficiently. So maybe we space Independent Reds and space Special Relationship. Like, that's not particularly ops efficient. But in any event, first we're going to play this East European unrest, I think, and put some pressure on the Middle East. So they opted to leave the 1 in leave a 3 in Romania, I should say. So let's go with, I think, you kind of don't really want to spend the op over protecting East Germany, partly because we have decent ops, but also we've got control of Truman Doctrine, so, you know, we know where it is, they don't, and we're going to get to dump it on our last action round with it as a 3-up play, so it's pretty hard for them to force their way in there. They choose to spend 1 in France, so I think we'll probably... I kind of want to use Special Relationship just to break West Germany, to force them to fill up France. I mean, that's obviously bad because they get the free up into France, but it at least gives us something that they have to respond to. With block out of the way, obviously, kind of jamming in West Germany is less good. Let's see. I think that's probably the best use of Special Relationship at this point because we can't use it to break UK. Yeah, I think let's go with that. We can presume that they've got some difficult cards in hand, like they may not want to be placing influence for the next couple of action rounds, or they may have things that are actually negative influence. I mean, Suez Crisis and De Gaulle are both out of the way. Last turn, I think they played De Gaulle, didn't they? Oh, they discarded it to our blockade. Yeah, in the headline phase this turn. So Suez and De Gaulle are gone. So we're not going to be getting either of those from them. We're not getting Socialist Governments, which they spaced last turn. But they could have either of the D cards. And they're 1 down on hand size. So they've either got to, space 1 or... Yeah, they chose not to discard desalinization, so I can presume they don't have that in hand. But if they do have both desalinization and decolonization, then obviously they have to play one of them now that they've discarded De Gaulle. But yeah, I think with a player of Ken's caliber, that's pretty unlikely at this point. Okay, Marshall Plan. Well, that's a good one for them. So that fills up everything, but it's somewhat of a defensive play, so I'm at that point, so I'm okay with that. So that lets us just space this independent Reds, loses us some tempo, but means that we don't lose Romania when we play this Truman Doctrine. Next action round, and they go space, decol, they succeed. So we'll place influence with this, I think, in... We might overprotect South Korea. And then take Afghanistan. I mean, they can jam into North Korea if we do that, but... Yeah, I mean, they could have test ban or NATO. There's a reasonable chance they have one of those. So I think I want to overprotect both of these. If they want to jam in India, they're jamming in India. That's just the way it goes sometimes. And then in the Middle East, I think we probably can go into Israel here. I think that might be better than 1 in Afghanistan. Presumably we're going to get Nasser next turn. We'll see how we go from either player. But I still think 1 into Israel is probably better than 1 into Saudi at this point, whilst the war is still alive. And Truman out of the deck. So we've got, crucially, Truman and CIA out of the way. Always unfortunate that we draw them both. But at least we get to control when they happen. So yeah, I think in terms of US events that we've got out of the deck before the reshuffle compared to the USSR events, NASA comes around for us in the final action round. So we can actually look at a reasonably positive scoring in the Middle East here. So we've got 4. So this is a very good hand. I mean, this obviously gives us the chance to flip Thailand if we want, and we can assert a pretty dominant position in the Middle East this turn with the amount of ops that we've got. So since we don't know where, this is an amazing hand actually. Like, it's high ops and it's a lot of the events that we want. We could headline De Gaulle, we could headline Vietnam Revolts and then play Decol in an action round. Either way, I think we're probably gonna coup. It's a tough one. If we play De Gaulle and then coup in Africa... No, I think if we event De Gaulle, we probably take France, don't we? But then we give up the coup. So perhaps we want to try and hold De Gaulle for the following turn, if possible. So maybe we headline Decol because it gives us the chance to take more non-battlegrounds and take crucial battlegrounds in Africa. I mean, it's obviously worse if they have defectors. We don't really want to lose Decol. So I think that puts headlining Decol out of the way because we definitely don't want it to get defectors. Headlining Vietnam Revolts would be okay since we're planning on playing Decol in an action round. But it doesn't really solve our problem of tempo because we want to be cooing and protecting our Middle Eastern countries, but also hopefully them not take Libya and Egypt. So we don't really have a way to degrade DEFCON, unfortunately, in the headline phase or in action round 1 here without cooing. So with all of that being said, cooing Egypt, I think, is the best option for us here because it secures us Libya and we have Middle East scoring. Even though cooing Africa would be nice, we've got Decol to help even that out. So let's go with headline Vietnam Revolts. So the Decol headline would have been correct, or rather would have given us domination, but at least we get a little bit out of that. So now we'll coup Egypt here. Cooing Egypt with a high ups card always kind of sucks because you are going to, as the USSR, because you're going to lose it at some point in the mid-war, but we're going to lose all that influence at some point, so it's a bit of a wasted 6 because anything between a 1 and a 6 is pretty much the same. But the thing about cooing with a 3-up card is that if we roll a 1, it's just absolutely terrible for us there. So I think that was worth enough victory points that it was worth cooing with the 4-up card. So the interesting thing now is that, obviously, because we put that 1 into Israel, we can play test ban next action round to take Israel. They've got D-Stal in hand, which, you know, they can space, no problem for them, unfortunate for us. They take the Europe scoring, which is also a little bit annoying, but also now gives us the opportunity to actually ram home this possible Middle East control. So we'll just take that opportunity here. We've got the ops in hand, so it's going to cost us 5 ops from now on to secure control of the Middle East. Means that we're not going to be getting the most out of our decolonization, but it'll still give us access to Africa. And it'll still give us a couple of crucial Southeast Asian countries for Southeast Asian scoring. But now that Asia scoring is out of the way, I think spending more of this turn prioritizing getting Middle East control is going to be better for us in terms of expected value from VPs. So they choose to go to Algeria. We'll take Saudi Arabia. That might break us, you know, in Israel or something, or in any one of these battlegrounds, but we've got a 3-op, which means we can take Libya and repair. The awkward thing is going to be that we can't keep doing that without giving them NORAD, but we may decide that we've got enough ops pressure on them that we can afford to play NORAD if it's going to secure us that many VPs. Eventing special relationship, okay. So we can, whoops, misplayed. Okay, perhaps they didn't intend to event that there. I think we can probably, no, not in effect, yep. I think we can probably play the decol now, which allows us to go 1, 2. Do we want to go 3? We're not going to get anything out of this Vietnam Revolts this turn, unfortunately. We can turn the China card into 6 operations points, but it's just not worth it now that Asia scoring's out of the way. So to only put 2 influence into Africa seems probably remiss of us here. So as much as I like taking Indonesia, I think we need to prioritize the African battlegrounds instead. And we need to do something more like this. I think do we go into Angola or Zaire here? I think we're probably going to Angola. And then the one into Thailand, just so we can fight for that at a later point and we keep up somewhat of a threat there. So let's commit to that. It asks something of them as well in terms of their ops commitment to fight for these African battlegrounds, and it means that when we play De Gaulle into Libya with our 2 action rounds remaining, we can get maximum effect out of it. So again, they're using their influence defensively. Unfortunately, means that we don't get to take one of the African battlegrounds, but at least we get to place influence in a relevant country. So now, if they've got a 2-op or greater card that they can afford to play, that's great for them. The event IP war, interesting, fails, and we get 10 VPs from Middle East scoring, which is not something I've done particularly regularly, I have to say, across my Twilight Struggle career. I tend to probably prioritize the other 2 continents a little more highly than the Middle East, but this time that's just where it fell. So heading into the mid-war now, with a pretty rubbish hand. 2 1-ups. Obviously, Junta is great. Defectors, did we see it last turn? No, we didn't. So that makes headlining Junta challenging for us. We'll probably just play it on AR1 instead, because we can't really risk it. One small step can be really crucial in this situation when our opponent is also on the first, is potentially going to go to the second space race spot this turn. The problem is our other headlines are just really not at all any good for us in any way. There's something to be said for headlining Panama Canal Returned so that we can coup Venezuela on action round 1, but a 2-op coup placing into Brazil and then coupping Venezuela just really isn't amazing. I think I'd rather just coup Panama, even knowing that we have this, and just not use the subsequent action rounds to try and spread a bit in South America before letting them in. How I learned, I think, is just not where we want to be right now. Hey Freyak, welcome down. East European unrest is obviously not good. Summit is pretty terrible. The options narrow pretty quickly here as to what we can actually afford to headline and what we want to headline. So Junta's important since we didn't get D-Style giving us a way into South America. So I just can't afford to headline that and potentially lose it. John Paul is dreadful here, especially since Warsaw Pact's not coming back till turn 7 because we got it on turn 3. I think maybe we have to headline How I Learned. And just put DEFCON to 3, just because I think it's our only doable headline. Okay, well that worked out well because we can put DEFCON to 2 now. And we'll put Voice of America in the bear trap and get out. So look, the headline worked out okay. Protected Nigeria, protected the Middle East, and got rid of VOA. It's not too bad. And now we're still in the position, even though VOA was our number 1 space target, we're still in the position, that's very helpful if that comes out now, because just bolstering Poland a little bit in a turn when we've got JP in hand is always useful. I think independent raids are still in the deck, so we don't want to overprotect Romania. Don't know what I'm doing there. I think we'll probably go like this. Give ourselves access to as much of Europe as we can. I sometimes do that, overprotect Romania. New to Twilight Struggle and have watched a lot of your YouTube vids to learn. Oh, good. I'm glad you've found them useful. This game's really interesting. I mean, this goes to show why Twilight Struggle is such a fascinating game, because I don't think across my many USSR games, let's see how many games I played as USSR, 180 games with since I started this account. Don't think I've dominated the controlled the Middle East at the end of turn 3 in any of those games before, so yeah, very interesting. So what did our opponent do? They did 1 Angola, 1 Saharan states, 1 South Africa. So overprotecting Angola there is interesting. I think we probably just coup Saharan states with Summit. Obviously there's a 1 in 6 chance that it fails and we roll a 1. But it gets rid of their domination and protects Nigeria, hopefully. So we don't want to roll a 1 here. It's very important we don't roll a 1. That's good. So that, as I said, protects Nigeria, because if they have adjacency to Nigeria, they just get to flip it with 3-up cards. And it also deprives them of the domination that they'd set up because it was their only non-battleground. So I wonder if I could ask a lot of questions, or if you want to focus on the game, that's fine too. I think because this one's a tournament game for the ITSL, probably best to keep the chat about the actual game to a minimum, but I'm very happy if you want to like store up a few questions and ask them towards the end of the game. I'm happy to hang around and have a chat about particular plays if you found them interesting. And, you know, feel free after I've made decisions or after things have already happened to chime in with comments or thoughts as well, as long as they don't affect what happens afterwards. That's totally fine. Arab-Israeli war succeeding is always handy. Take those extra VPs. And I think we'll just, coup Cameroon here, protect again on the other side. The problem is we don't have a particularly effective coup opportunity in terms of cards in hand. We'd have to get rid of 1 small step, which I don't really want to do. Or play Panama Canal Returned, which again I don't really want to do. That's probably going to be my hold card this turn. Going with East European Unrest seems pretty bad. John Paul's pretty unplayable. So, I mean, we can't just keep cooing single non-battlegrounds in Africa forever. So we're probably going to have to give them domination at some point. The thing about cooing Cameroon though is it gives us the opportunity to flip, so I'm actually going to spend the 1 small step, as awkward as that is for space tempo. We're happy to go to space later in the turn, so let's go with that. They'll probably coup back now because they need mill-ops anyway, so that roll was not ideal. But they chose to go to space, so again, you know, not great for space tempo as I said, but now we can just go to space in response. I think we'll space John Paul rather than NORAD to deprive them of their 2nd space shot and mean that they can't try and get to that 3rd space race spot before us this turn. Although they can because they've got CNS, so there you go. So a little bit unfortunate that we got punished for the space race shenaniganos there, but at least we can flip Zaire here with this East European Unrest. I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe that was unlucky rolling a 2. Like, a 2's not an amazing roll, but we rolled a 5 when it was important with that 1-up coup, so I don't mind too much. Place 1 more influence. Oh no, we don't want to. What am I doing? Just going on autopilot there. So yeah, I think obviously our other opportunity this turn, instead of doing that, was to Junta and then use those 3 influence to try and spread from wherever we Junta. But I think flipping Zaire is okay, because it means if they have Africa scoring, it becomes less of a problem for us. And it's harder for them to force us into a bad scoring, because now even if they coup Cameroon, for example... Okay, so they're flipping Zaire back. I think that's alright. Yeah, so I think with their remaining 2 action rounds, what they probably want to do is coup Cameroon and then play the Africa scoring card, because I think they probably have it. But what we're going to do is place into Venezuela and then realign Panama. just give it a go again, even though it's low odds to succeed. It's just getting that access that's important. And now, if they do coup Cameroon, we'll consider whether we coup back, but I think more likely we're just going to play no rad. Okay, so they had ABM. Ugh, that's awkward. Ish. Yeah, that hurts. So now we can just play Panama Canal Returns, and we can place Influence. Where do we want to go? Maybe we want to go to South Africa. There's not really anywhere else we can profitably spread, I don't think. Afghanistan's okay. Actually, I think Malaysia's good. Southeast Asia scoring is still out there, and getting access to Indonesia is actually pretty decent from a Southeast Asia scoring perspective, but also from an Asia scoring perspective. When we come into the late war and Asia scoring comes back, that's going to be quite important if we can get the country count up, because we're currently sitting on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6, 7, and then we can take Taiwan and Malaysia for the 8th. So that could be important. Okay, so yeah, forces the response from them in terms of going into Indonesia. And they did not have the scoring card. So now we could headline Shay. We've got grain sales to Soviets, which we can space. We've also got colonial rearguards, which is going to be a bit of a problem. Still no Quagmire, annoyingly, because I've been kind of holding this no rad, hoping that we will draw Quagmire and then be able to play it for free. Muslim Revolution, not obviously doing a lot here, but it's always nice to have a playable 4-ops card with no downside. I think we'll just headline Shay because it works pretty reasonably. Headlining Missile Envy could be okay. Wheelberry is still out there. And in terms of other DEFCON degraders, yeah, I think just as the Soviets in the mid-war, if you don't know where We Will Bury You is, you just don't want to die to Missile Envy, so it's just not worth taking the risk. Socialist government's not amazing. France is double overprotected, and so is Italy. So let's just go with Shay. Yeah, so if we headline Missile Envy and they had We Will Bury You in hand, then we just die there, so that's not good at all. So they're protecting their battlegrounds in Africa. So we can flip Zaire, or we can take South Africa. I think... Or we can put one into Venezuela. So we could... We can't flip Zaire and put one into Venezuela because flipping Zaire costs us 3. But I think we need to play into Venezuela this action round just to preserve our position. What's the strategy on Missile Envy? Like, what cards are you hoping to fish out? So just because it hits their highest ops card in hand, you're hoping to... hitting ABM Treaty is amazing, but they'd already played ABM Treaty. Hitting any other 4-op card in their hand is great, but US-Japan Pact's out of the deck. Marshall Plan, I think, is still in the deck, so we could have hit that. The problem is that if you hit We Will Bury You, it degrades DEFCON, and if DEFCON is already at 2, so they play a DEFCON degrading card for their headline, then you lose the game. Grain Sales is one prime candidate for degrading DEFCON in headline phase, and they obviously weren't going to play that because we had it, but they had another one in Duck and Cover, so it's lucky that we didn't play our Missile Envy, if they have We Will Bury You in hand, that is. So we'll put the 1 into Venezuela, and we'll put 2 into South Africa. Just see where we end up. I mean, we've got a couple of playable 3-ops here. Shuttle Diplomacy is annoying, but playable. Socialist Governments and Cuban Missile Crisis are both playable, so they are opportunities that we have to try and flip African battlegrounds. But by playing the 1-op into Venezuela, we force them to respond by playing into Brazil, and then we can go the other way and put 1 into Ecuador if we want to spread from Colombia, to give ourselves the opportunity to try and get down through Peru into Chile and Argentina that way. So that Shay there was pretty good. It was really lucky for us that they played into Colombia. Drawing Shay turned out to be very effective at combating what they were trying to do. But I think in the long game, we're obviously in a position where we're ahead in Asia. We're ahead in terms of battlegrounds, 4-2, which means the likelihood of them dominating us is lower. It's not impossible, but it's lower. And if we can end the game controlling the Middle East and dominating or being slightly ahead in Asia, then we'll have a good chance of winning. But we really need to keep fighting hard in these mid-war regions whilst we're having a little bit of a play in Asia to try and either maintain or slightly improve our position. Like, that's how, when I get to this point in the game, where those 3 early war regions are kind of somewhat locked in, you think about what are going to be your most high impact plays in those regions. So for us at the moment, it's adding more influence to Mediterranean countries, which is why our opponent removed us from Yugoslavia when we played the second EEU. And it's also playing in Asia to take enough countries that we end up in a position of domination. And meanwhile, protecting, so we overprotected North Korea and South Korea early on in turn 1. Protecting India and Pakistan then becomes really important, because if we can hold on to those 4 battlegrounds, obviously India the most vulnerable of those because of the war, but our opponent has now drawn the war twice, so we just need to hope that they don't draw it the 3rd time, because they played it for the 2nd time on turn 3. Yeah, so if we can hold on to them, and if we can take the remaining uncontrolled countries in Asia, then we have an opportunity to dominate at the end of the game. And if we can do that whilst maintaining a kind of even or slightly ahead position in these mid-war regions, then we're looking okay. And that's obviously what our opponent's trying to prevent. All right. So we get U2 incident. They go into Brazil. So we now need to go into Ecuador this action round, I think. And we also want to give ourselves the opportunity to take South Africa. So I think we'll go like this. I think this just causes them the most annoyance, because it makes it hard for them to take South Africa short of a 4-up card, obviously, but that's a lot to commit to South Africa, because then we can go to Botswana and 1 Peru, for example. Okay, so they coup Cameroon, which now means we can overprotect Nigeria and put 2 into... we could put 2 into South Africa, but then obviously they can take Botswana. So I think I would rather put 1 into Nigeria, 2 into Botswana. Or do I want to go into Peru here? It's a toughie. Definitely want to space grain sales, which probably means we're holding colonial rearguards, and probably means we're playing both shuttle diplomacy and NORAD. So we want to think about this action round carefully, because it's probably... We've got a couple more good action rounds, and then a couple of action rounds that are a bit shakier. So we definitely want to overprotect. Do we want to go into Peru? No, I think we want to fight this Southern Africa war, and I think the way to do it is to go 1 into Botswana, 1 into South Africa. Because if we go 2 into South Africa, then they get an easy 2-up placement into Botswana. If we go 2 into Botswana, then they get to put a few in South Africa. So they choose to opt for Africa scoring, and they get the domination. I mean, it's unfortunate. That was the one risk for us in doing that, and they happen to have the scoring card, but there's not much that you can kind of do about that. So let's go 1, 2... Oh, actually, so we want to think about that Asia position now as well. So I actually think we want to go Southeast Asia, and then Peru, looking to move down towards Chile. Yeah, so really unfortunate scoring card timing. Well played by them. We could have cooed Cameroon back. We were sort of foxing a bit and hoping that they didn't have the scoring card this turn, but what can you do? So they go Uruguay. We're probably not going to coup there. We're probably going to go in, though, to the region. So we'll probably go 1. And then we'll probably put a couple in Taiwan here, I think. Yeah, because we want to... Even though shuttle diplomacy is coming into play... we want to still be able to try and dominate in Asia. And that means if we can take if we can be on 8 countries, that effectively means we're on 7. Then we just need to flip one of their 1-up countries to 1 stability countries rather to be ahead. Okay. So now we'll play no rad and then we'll space grain sales in our final action round, I think. Or would we rather... Yeah, we don't want to give them the opportunity, even though Allende is still out there, we don't want to give them the opportunity to take Chile for control there. Yeah, so they can obviously put 2 into Canada here, and it's a bit annoying for us. But it's not the end of the world. I've seen South Africa being the most realigned country in the game. Yeah, I think it is one of. If we put one of our 3-ups cards into South Africa this turn and then they just went into Botswana, we were just in a bit of a pickle. But the 5 VPs from the scoring card was not ideal. So they go to space and they succeed, and then we go to space and let's succeed as well. Yes, very good. But unfortunately, they get to see our headline next turn. And we're holding a card, not the worst card, but a card that's not great for us. So we'll see if they opt to take Canada here. Looks like they are. No, they're going Mexico. Fair enough. So leaving NORAD unactivated. We draw Lone Gunman, which does kind of suck. Salt negotiations. I don't think we need salt here. But salting for ABM treaty could be okay. Salting for Junta, Missile and Via Red Scare is not great. Salting for Destalinization is not great either. Brush War could be helpful for us on Thailand, particularly if we were to flip Laos first. We can also Brush War Italy at a 4+. I think, I mean, it's a bit, gee, that's a tough one. Do we Brush War Thailand at a 4+? Do we spend the ops trying to flip Laos? Or do we Brush War Italy at a 4+? Eesh. I think we probably headline... What are we going to coup with? I think we're going to coup with Salt, because we've got limited options for other cards to coup with. So let's headline Willy Brandt. I think we'll just take the VP and the Disruption, and then we'll play Lone Gunman back into the reshuffle. Allende is nice to have if they try and ops race us in Chile for some reason. It's also nice to have the 1 in Peru for that reason. If they jam into Chile and then try and realign us out the back, it only takes us 1 op to fill up Peru. Seems like they may have Sadat, which could spell the end of our Middle East control, but that was always going to happen at some point. We got the 1 scoring off it. So this Brush War, I think, in the context of this whole game, is going to be quite a decisive role. Because if we can flip either Thailand or Italy, it's going to be pretty important, I think, for the overall scoring in this game. So they unfortunately get the positive score in South America. think we're just going to coup an African battleground here, and I think it's probably going to be Angola. So let's coup... Yeah, I think we'll space Regards and we'll play Ask Not at the end of the turn. So let's coup Angola. That's successful, which now means we have some pretty positive looking positions in Africa. So I'm pretty happy about this. With the ability to take South Africa and Botswana quite easily, and also flip Zaire. Let's see. So they're going for the domination in Central America. We're going to play an op. Are we going to play an op or are we going to coup? I think we coup with Camp David Accords. Like we're going to give them Camp David Accords here anyway. And we'd rather coup with a 2-op because this is an important coup. So let's just do that. So they still get to dominate us, but they don't get to realign us out of Cuba, importantly, and they can't now coup us out of Nicaragua particularly easily. Obviously, if they have Sadat, they get Egypt back completely, but that was always going to happen at some point, and the other influence there doesn't really particularly hurt us too much. So they now are in a position where if they've got the scoring card, they probably want to pop it. Otherwise, we can maybe coup Guatemala and then try and coup Mexico at some point in the future. There's really quite a few things here outstanding for us that are good on the board in terms of opportunities. We might second last AR this Ask Not and then try and AR7 the Brush War. Because AR6 Ask Not, AR7 Brush War allows us to flip Lao and then Brush War Thailand potentially. Let's see how we go. Okay, so it looks like they've probably got the Southeast Asia scoring card. So the question is, do we Ask Not now? Give them the chance to get rid of some bad cards from hand. I think we probably do, because all of our regions are currently scored. Central America is the only scoring card remaining out there. And I think this is quite important for both VPs in Southeast Asia. But also for giving our Brush War the best chance. Like, we're going to do it at some point this turn to give ourselves the best chance of succeeding with Brush War on Thailand, if that is what we opt to do. So we might as well do it now if we think they've got the scoring card. So they ditched the We Will Bury You, which it seems like they've probably been holding for a while. As they play Cultural Revolution. Unfortunate, because Usuri and Nixon are both still out there. And they get to flip Lao back. So now we have the choice of 4+ing it on Lao or Thailand. On Thailand or Italy. So I think we probably just do it on Thailand. Yeah, it was always going to be an important role in the game, given, the fine balance and the fact we thought they had Southeast Asia scoring there, and it just did not work out for us. That 4 VPs really, really hurts. That sucks. Well, let's just keep pressing on where we can. We can still look for Africa control here. That's not beyond the realms of possibility, but their VP position is starting to get a little worrying heading into the late war. Don't like that at all. Well, let's just coup here. At least we get rid of that, so they have to place into another non-battleground if they want to be dominating. We can also even up the country count, but we want to be spacing. We've only got 1 ALF, so we're going to be spacing colonial rear guards is what we're going to be doing. Unfortunately, if we succeed, it means that... Oh, no. Oh, maybe we hold the rear guards then. I think we do, because we just gotta do this. Oh, oh, this turn has been an absolute beating. If they have the Central America scoring now, I'm gonna scream. No, they're just realigning us. Okay. Either way, it's pretty bad. Ugh, that is gross. And his hand, what is with these hands, honestly? Oh, man, oh man. Well, the defectors could be back in the deck, but you know, we've got to make some plays in the headline phase if we can. There's a lot of blue PP point. Not really quite sure what that means, but oh, do you mean in our hand? It's a lot of blue cards that we've been drawing. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. We have not had particularly red hands. We had one decent hand, I think. Which one was it? Can't remember. I think it was that one. That hand was pretty decent. The rest of them have been, yeah, overall pretty blue. Oh, this one was nice. This was our best hand on turn 3. But yeah, otherwise we haven't had a heap looking exactly like we'd want them to. But still, there is a path back here. So if we take Afghanistan here, I think we dominate Asia. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, we still need to flip another non-battleground, unfortunately. Kind of challenging, as in to dominate with shuttle diplomacy. But if we can make it to final scoring, then we already will dominate Asia without having to flip another country. They have to flip one back from us to avoid being dominated in final scoring. And we have Middle East control in final scoring. It's just a matter of whether I think we can bring the... So if you explain why the USA has an advantage in the late war, I just don't see why they do. I feel like their late war cards are a bit underwhelming. They headlined Central America scoring. Interesting. Even though we headlined Liberation Theology. Maybe they feel that they can't combat us. Okay, and we're gonna... Okay, well, no, that's not what we want to do. So what if we go 1... Yeah, okay. What's the best thing we can do? I think it's probably 1 Cuba, 2 Mexico, coup Mexico, but then we get maybe, I think it's probably 1 Cuba, 1 Haiti, 1 Mexico. We get AVP, and now we get to play Junta and go to Brazil, coup Mexico. I mean, that's not amazing, is it? But we've got all 2 op cards in hand. There's not much we can do. We can play puppet governments into Afghanistan at some point. That's probably our best use of it. They get to have a mini Marshall Plan in the Mediterranean though. Ugh. What is USSR? I'll do this play first. So we're gonna place 2 probably actually in Argentina. And then coup Mexico. Or do we just coup Argentina, actually, in case they've redrawn South America scoring? Yeah, I think that's probably what we do. Let's hope for a good roll there. Alright. So explain why the USA has an advantage in the late war. Don't see why they do. I feel like their late war cards are a bit underwhelming. So there are a couple of important ways they do. One is in Europe, because they've got Chernobyl and tear down this wall, they have a good opportunity to try and force Europe control, which is obviously an auto win. The other is Star Wars is probably the most powerful card in the game. If you're ahead on the space race, being able to play any card from the discard pile immediately using Star Wars is very, very strong, because obviously the delta or the difference between the average power of a card in your hand versus the average power of a card in the discard pile is significant. It's likely, like the average power of something discard pile is significantly higher most of the time once you get to turn 9 or 10. So that's a lot of flexibility that you get from that card. I think the other reason is just going last. So the fact that you get the last move before final scoring is very, very strong. Alright, so now We're probably going to have to cop independent reds this turn. Really sucks that we redrew that card. We're also going to have to give them the China card, which is probably a good time to go flipping, trying to play it positively to flip cards in Southeast Asia. Truman's out of the way, so independent reds is like a bit meh anyway. I think we just coup Cameroon and put the maximum realign pressure onto Zaire. And just hope that we don't roll a 1 again. Alright, 6 is good. Take that. So if they have Africa scoring, because our opponent has tended to play most aggressively into regions where they have the scoring card, and they've had most of the scoring cards this game. So we'll see where this coup goes, but yeah, wow, okay. That's huge. So now we get the realignment opportunity on Zaire. And I think that's probably the only place we want to realign. We've got Sadat, which we might try and hold until Middle East scoring comes out again, because we're going to be playing the China card this turn. So I think we'll hold Sadat over for a turn, at least. Which means we want to probably space Colonial Rearguards, play Nixon once they have the China card, and then hold Usuri and Sadat. So we're probably realigning with Portuguese Empire Crumbles here, I think. So let's just go with that. So that was successful. And then we just get a kind of free realign, which you might think realigning South Africa is the play here, but realigning countries where that you're already in control of is pretty bad. So I think we'll actually just realign Panama at +0. Okay, so no luck there, but a good position now in Africa for us. I think cooing, even with a 3-up card, cooing a country where your opponent has 5 influence it's asking a lot of the dice. And the fact that they rolled a 2 and it was still really bad for them, even if they'd rolled a 3 and kicked us out of Cameroon, I think it would have been pretty bad. Like they had a 50-50 to make it something decent. Okay, so they've drawn you intervention and Quagmire, awkward. Okay, rolled reasonably well. So if we're going to flip a country, we want to flip it properly. I think we'll probably flip, we can just play into Ivory Coast here is the other thing. So we don't want to play into Ivory Coast though until we've played into Afghanistan, because we can't play puppet governments. Yeah, our hand's just getting pretty squeezed here. Because we can't really play any of those 3 cards yet. We need to play China card first. I think, so if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then we can play puppet governments next action round. And we dominate Asia. So we just have to hope they don't successfully realign Nigeria this action round. Which, given they're at +1, there's a decent chance they'll do. Okay, whew, all right, going the big guns. 4-op realignment. 1, 2, 3, and where's the 4th one going? Cuba, okay. So we're going to space first. Giving them a 2 VPs from Nixon's actually just super awkward here. We're going to space rear guards, I think. Because just for the long game, as much as giving them the 2 VPs makes Europe scoring lethal, we just have to take some risks at this point and hope that we get a positive scoring back rather than tanking all of our other scorings by playing rear guards instead. So let's space rear guards. And just, it's good we deprive them of seeing our headline next turn. Obviously the bad thing about getting to Man with the Soviets is you can't space grain sales or Voice of America anymore. But, you know, keeping up on the space race does also stop them from getting Star Wars, so it's not all bad. But yeah, we really want one of these scoring cards to come out. Unfortunate also that they're going to probably take back Mexico. What do you think of the card War Games? I personally hate it. Yeah, I don't love it. I guess it's one of those things where the game, you have to ask yourself, would the game be worse if it didn't have more comeback mechanics? I think it's probably got enough comeback mechanics in the form of DEFCON that the player who's ahead isn't 100% to win the game, even if there are 19 VPs going to turn 10, that you don't need probably War Games. War Games is probably just a little bit too swingy. Okay, so this is pretty bad. They're now on 16. We'll be putting them to 18 with Nixon. Yeah, so this is like real bad news. I think we just have to actually play Sadat this turn and probably hold Nixon and Asuri. I mean, that obviously sucks because it means that we don't get to control the Middle East, but whatever. So the question is, do we coup Cameroon or do we place into Mexico? I think we actually place influence into Mexico so that we can take it with puppet governments, even though that gives them the realign opportunity. Again, the more countries that we can take that give us domination in regions, the better at this point, because we just desperately are in need of victory points. But yeah, the scoring card timing for us has just been horrific. Other than that Middle East scoring that we got on turn 3, everything else has not really gone according to plan. That Africa scoring in particular, but also the South America scoring. The fact that our opponent got 10 VPs off those combined. Whereas if Africa scoring, for instance, had come out this turn, we were in a really positive place. Or if we had had South America scoring, we could have timed it a lot better with all of these non-battlegrounds that we had one influence in. Really did hurt us quite a bit. Okay, so they had the strong finish, and now we have limited opportunities to do a lot of good things with these puppet governments. So we could play it into Turkey. We could coup Nicaragua. I think probably coupping Nicaragua is the way to go. Oh, actually, Central America's been scored, so it's probably not the way to go. Breaking Brazil gives us domination. But so does coupping Cameroon or Saharan states. Or putting one in Botswana, actually. Yeah, so maybe we go one Botswana. And one somewhere else doesn't really help us very much. One in Afghanistan helps us slightly. Actually, it doesn't really help us at all, because if they flip a country, then we still lose domination to shuttle diplomacy, although by final scoring we do want to have that country, obviously. So I do still think it's Botswana. Maybe it's here. Yeah, I think that's probably okay. Could have gone into one of the non-battlegrounds in South America as well, because now if they coup Colombia, they have domination in South America. Whereas if we went into... Oh, they still do anyway, actually, if we go into one of these countries, so that's much of a muchness. And I think, even though they now get to solidify Europe domination, most likely, I think securing our own domination of Africa and forcing that kind of play is probably better. Okay, Shay, cool. Well, that's not too bad, I guess. Let's take this coup and that coup, I think. Let's take this coup first. Well, that means we need to coup again in Africa, I think. Although the coup in Uruguay is also potentially worth quite a few points. If it's successful, but it's much harder to succeed. The coup in Africa gives us Africa domination back. Ethiopia is not a good one. Southeast African states, Portuguese Empire crumbles, is still out there. So I think we probably coup Saharan states or Uruguay. Yeah, I think the greater chance of Saharan states... Siren State succeeding makes it better, but you know, if we'd rolled a 1 on Uruguay, it would have done nothing. So at least that did something. And it forces them to commit ops to Africa if they want to even out the country count, which they choose to do. And they choose to take Canada for NORAD purposes. Africa is not having it. That's right. They're not at all interested in Soviet coups whatsoever. Well, considering we held 2 blue cards, we can't really complain too much about this hand, I don't think. But we just don't have anything that really does anything. And that's kind of been the problem for us for a while. Like, we just haven't really drawn any of the red cards that kind of do stuff. Yeah, them having potential war games is a problem. Latin American debt crisis doesn't really do anything. I think we just probably headline Formosan resolution. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, brush war sucks. Yeah, I guess we at least get the flower power VPs. Where are they brush warring us? Syria or Libya, probably? Pakistan, possibly? Libya? Okay, well, we're both 0 from 1 on brush war. Can't complain about that. Decolonization. Well, we don't need to decol yet. We can just coup Nigeria. And what are we going to coup with? Probably so we can coup Nigeria, or we can play duck and cover. I think we'd just rather space duck and cover, which means we need to play the other 2 cards though. Ugh, that's pretty miserable, isn't it? So what are our other options? We just can't give them we can't give them the VPs from duck and cover. That's just not an option. So we need to coup, which means we need to coup with something that's bad for us. I think we just coup with North Sea oil on Nigeria. It's probably the answer. Central America is not getting scored this turn. Africa could. So North Sea oil, coup, Nigeria. Let's go. Nice. NORAD not ideal. But like we've said before, it's okay. South Africa's probably where they go. Europe could score, yeah. I mean, Europe scoring is a problem for us. They got war games anyway. GG. Yeah, so there you go. What do I think of war games? I hate it. I can't stand the card. Yeah, for that reason, you know, I think we had a decent shot. We weren't guaranteed to win. Like I said, we just didn't really get enough of the red cards that kind of did relevant stuff, and we kept drawing all these 1-ups. I mean, like, we just got a ridiculous number of 1. I got almost every 1-up card in the game except for, well, they get NASA, Romanian, and Captured Nazi Scientist, and them getting Romanian was actually really bad for us then. Forced us to space independent reds. So, yeah, I mean, we had kitchen debates, Allende, Lone Gunman, Sadat, Summit in the mid-war, and Panama Canal. They got OAS, I guess, as well. But yeah, I think our ops were vastly inferior, and we just never got anything that gave us the impetus. As USSR, do you coup Italy or Iran? This game I couped Iran because we headlined Europe scoring. So Middle East was the only one that was going to be scored on turn 1 or 2. We got a positive scoring, I think we got even scoring out of Middle East there, because they headlined it when we didn't dominate. But then we got a very positive scoring on turn 3 when we controlled it. Queuing Italy when they're at 4 is pretty risky. I think the only time I queue Italy as the USSR is if they don't have access back in, and I do, which does happen quite a bit. Or if I get socialist governments and reduce it to 2, or if they set up 4-3-3, or any setup that doesn't have 4 in Italy, then I'm more likely to consider queuing it, particularly if they also don't have access back in. But anyway, that's the end of that one. Unfortunately, a loss, but hope you enjoyed the game, and we will see you again soon. Thanks for watching. I've been Jesse Marshall. See ya.